Hello and welcome to Wild Earth's Wild Chats. My name is Ben Southall. I'm your host for the next 1 hour. I'm the founder of Best Life Adventures, and today on Wild Chats, I'm joined by a good friend, Richard Fitzpatrick, an Emmy award-winning underwater cinematographer. He's a shark researcher. He is definitely one of the world's leading marine visual storytellers. And in this episode, I want to go behind the lens and explore what it really takes to film wildlife well in crazy situations, what it involves to have patience, to sum up risk, to look at conservation because it's a big factor in that, and to tell me all about some of the unforgettable moments he's had in the wild. Richard, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ben. How are you?
Absolutely magnificent, actually. We've done a little bit of stuff together in the past, so I know a good bit about it. There's always a little bit of a script and some questions, but I think we'll just sort of go into it from the early days of Fitzy, because you have lived a life above, on and under the water, and you've turned it into a business and an industry, really. How did you first get into the world of doing things on the water?
Well, I grew up in the southern part of the Great Barrier Reef. So as a kid, we used to be going, I was in Rockhampton, and we used to go to the beach area, which is called Yeppoon, and from about the age of 10 I had a marine fish tank and my mates had them, so we'd be running around collecting specimens, and then the fathers would take us out to the Keppel Islands, and then once a year we used to get our big camping trip with my mate Dougal and his dad, who was a local science teacher, and another mate Bevan used to come on it, and we used to go out for 2 weeks to Northwest Island, which is just north of Heron. So we used to camp out there and spend all day collecting fish, and we had little battery-powered air pumps, and we'd bring them back. And I actually found a photo the other day of us there, and I'd forgotten until I saw the photo. We're all sitting there, and we've got the fish, and Dougal's documenting what species it was, and I'm drawing it out. And when we were 13, we made a little book about the fish of Northwest Island, which we won the Westpac Science Award that year.
No.
I've been a fish nerd for a long time. And ironically, those two also work in the marine world. Dougal's a big professor of deep water species over in Japan, and Bevan's one of Australia's biggest IT entrepreneurs doing submarine cables across the ocean, bringing internet to Australia.
So it's really your foundation stones of life and knowledge and building up that passion for the underwater world is very much out on the most magnificent reef system in the world, really. I mean, the southern end I spend a lot of time at, as you do, around Lady Elliot and Musgrave and things, but that really was where you cut your teeth before you started looking at the big stuff.
Yeah. Parents it was before internet, and parents would be like, just go out into the ocean. They're all day snorkeling. And it was way before we had scuba gear. And so if a fish was in a rock, we'd take tag teams down. You'd go down, work out where it was, have your fingers jammed in these holes. Then the person would come up and down and take over, or you went up and got a breath and went down again. So yeah, it's pretty insane way to learn about the reef as a kid growing up. It was awesome.
And this is in the days of capturing it with just using your eyes and taking it home and having it in a marine tank. There was no journey at that stage into actually using any equipment whatsoever to film it. And what was the early stage of getting into that?
No, but I was very much into, teaching people about the ocean. In year 10, I took my epaulet shark to school. Oh no, you're right. The epaulet shark to school from my shark talk, and then out of the esky full of salt water and an air stone, I pulled out the live shark.
Love it.
Had the talk, put it back in. Mum was outside, took it out,
home,
put it back in the tank. So,
do you reckon it'd be frowned upon now, going into school doing that sort of thing, just because of conservation stuff, or do you just think, if you can, it's just like the passion was there from so early on. Why try and stem that?
Yeah. I mean, we got really good public aquariums around Australia which fill that role. Now, we're in Rockhampton. We didn't have a lot.
Rules and regs didn't really matter.
We used to have to do it all ourselves. But all our friends and family. I remember friends would come over and they'd just sit there in front of the fish tanks. We'd be doing talks about the animals and just watching all the behaviours. So,
Did it translate naturally into streamlining your study into marine biology? Is that the next step you took to sort of making it more from a hobby into a career potentially?
Yeah, I was really lucky when I went to JCU in Townsville to start my marine biology degree. I went just after Christmas, like a month or two before the uni started. And being a fish nerd, I went to the Great Barrier Reef Aquarium had just opened, less than a year old. My first day there, I went to go look at this thing because I just wanted to see it. And then one of the staff members asked me a question about what I was looking at, and then I asked them a few questions, and then they pointed a few fish out, and being the nerd I was knocking off all the scientific names, and they're like, you want to come out the back, meet the curator? And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. Cool.
Big
Went out the
day.
back. Oh, yeah. And I hadn't even signed in for uni at that stage. And 2 weeks later, I was working there.
Wow.
I actually worked at the aquarium the whole way through my degree. So I was working for the Marine Park Authority through my whole undergrad,
I
which
mean,
all
that's
my colleagues, fellow students,
a
absolutely
dream
hated.
of. Yeah, yeah. Because you'd almost done the work experience. And most people do the study and then try and find the job, and you were running them parallel to each other, and then sort of just rolled off the end of your qualification into that.
Yeah, third year, I had to give a few lectures to my own class because the Marine Park Authority used to supply a lecturer to do the stuff. So I'd go in and teach my own class. So I'd give myself
Brilliant.
an A.
Naturally. And since then, obviously, your journey has very much gone from the passion, you're doing stuff with JCU still, but also then turning that into a means of capturing it and storytelling for other people around the world. And you've hit some heady heights with the people you've worked with, the teams you've worked with. The early days of capturing imagery, whether it's photo or video, was it straight into video? Or was it photo you were doing early
Yeah,
on?
I went because of the Marine Park Authority through my undergrad. They had a whole library of stills slides, and so I'd be raiding that library the whole time to do talks, both in the aquarium and for my presentations at the uni. And all the lecturers would be like, "Can we have a copy of those slides, please?" So that was always a good thing. But there were so many good slides back then, and Ron and Val Taylor were donating heaps of stuff to the Marine Park Authority. And then my interest at the aquarium was always behaviour in animals. Slides were great to show the species, but to see a clownfish lay eggs or a seahorse give birth. So then that was when the first high-8 video cameras were coming out in the early 90s. And I got one of those, and I'd start shoot little videos at the aquarium of these behaviours and then loop them in. Here's a couple of slides, and I'd show, 30 seconds of the actual behaviour. And that's what got me interested in video, is using it to document behaviour and going that one step beyond what slides could do. So I was there at the right time. And then I moved down to the Manly Aquarium as the senior biologist and education officer there, and just expanded that. And then that's when I met Ron and Val Taylor, and Ron took me under his wing to teach me some stuff. And then actually, I've just literally came back a few hours ago from Lady Elliot Island. And while I was on there, Tim Moore, Ranger Tim from the old Totally Wild days, from all through the 90s, was there. He had just resigned from National Parks last week. And I did not know that my wife was a huge fan of Totally Wild and Ranger Tim. So she was fangirling it for the last couple of days. And she never realised I was a weekly presenter on it for a couple of years when I was at Manly Aquarium making these, me and Tim had a great catch up. And then I was just only reminded the last couple of days, that's where learning the film skills and how to tell visual stories and making those weekly stories from Manly Aquarium for Totally Wild for the kids show. And then Ron would get me on to do second camera, and I did stunt work on Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando when they were shooting that, because Ron and Val had shot Jaws and other feature films. And then, I was really lucky to, then, Ron would start recommending me for jobs. And then my camera habits got more and more expensive and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But, the whole, being in the aquarium, both Townsville and Manly, those first few years, to see behaviours happen in front of you, like grey nose mating, really rare animals breeding, to have the camera there that we could document those behaviours was really good. And then when I left that world, I came back to the Marine Park Authority again to develop education courses on marine biology for the tourism industry. That was based around training videos and multimedia at the beginning of those days.
Yeah. So working with the Taylors, anybody that knows anything about snorkel, scuba, dive, underwater, probably some of the first visual storytellers to really open up the underwater world to a global audience through the way they did it, the way they presented it, the quality imagery, and their pure focus on conservation.
Yeah, so growing up through the 70s and 80s, you see their docos, the Cousteau docos. They're on the film days, and then I've been pretty blessed to have worked with nearly every one of my heroes. I've actually ended up working with them and becoming friends with them. So the Taylors, Mike Degree, who was the big BBC shooter back in the 80s, he was the first guy to do the orcas, grabbing the seals off the beach. He used to do all the deep sea stuff for Attenborough and heaps of Attenborough series. And he was a TV presenter himself. He was amazing, and I got to do a few films with him. And he was a shark biologist that became a filmmaker. That was the pathway I always wanted to go. And his his films on behavior. I mean, it's still, Sharks on Their Best Behavior, which is his film from the late 80s for PBS, I still think is probably the best shark documentary ever made. And then
Okay.
I got to work with him. We had this massive series with Celine Cousteau and him, me, Sanjan from Conservation International at the time, and for Discovery. And then, and then Mike and me had another big project planned. And unfortunately, he died in a chopper crash when shooting a gig for James Cameron in Australia.
Yeah.
So, but to have worked with him was lucky. It's such a good, he's a really good mate, actually. He is cheeky bugger when you catch up with stuff. And and then, worked with Attenborough and a lot of those presenters over the years as well. So, it's always cool to meet your heroes.
Absolutely. I mean, your filmography, the bibliography, because you got the book out there as well, and there's lots of reasons and ways to tell a story. I imagine in the early days of capturing video, your gear was pretty rudimentary. It was pretty big. You were pushing the old fridge through the water, and you were trying to capture this sort of small stuff that was happening. What was it like trying to, engage underwater with creatures when you got massive gear back in those days?
It's still to what I do today. I do it solo. I always, and then establish a relationship with the animal that you're working on. And it can sometimes take days. The same animal you're going back to, and it has to get at ease with you. I always find if you've got a dive buddy, an animal's trying to look at two of you, it's just, but if you can be a one-on-one experience, always a lot better. And, if you're a BBC camera person working in Africa and you've got a 1500mm lens, you can zoom in on the lions half a kilometre away and the cheetah.
Yeah.
And, for us, a good day is 30-metre viz. But to get the good shots, you need the animals performing within 1 or 2 metres or even closer to get the clarity and the colour. And that's where you have to have, your skills in the underwater environment with and then you're wanting those animals to perform naturally, like feeding and mating, like right there in front of you. Imagine trying to do that in the African savannah a metre away. And, the early days, the cameras have nearly always just been the same size. Doesn't matter what the technology is. The resolution goes up, so they need more chipsets and the lenses.
Right. So the camera physically gets bigger.
They're always bulky and heavy, but the range of optics we have now is amazing what we can do. Probe lenses and all this kind of stuff. We have a lot of motion control gear now that we actually take underwater. So then you can't actually touch the camera. You use an underwater joystick to drive a probe into the coral to look at the crab inside. So the visual storytelling has become more complex over the years. I was up converting using AI, some of the old stuff from 30 years ago for a friend of mine the other day of some docos we shot. And, I was like, geez, we weren't, the technology was new. The video, because we'd just come from film to video, you could shoot for like an hour underwater. So it did give you an opportunity to tell better visual stories, combining wide shots, close ups and stuff like that. But then I look at that. So it's like, if I was teaching a video course right now and I looked at what we shot 30 years ago, I'd fail myself. But that's there's so much better tools out there now, but we use a whole range, like GoPros. You can put them in dangerous spots. Drones.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I was just looking at the Barrier Reef series that we did 15 years ago that we did a lot of promotion work with you up and down around Australia back in the day. We didn't have a drone 15 years ago.
It was all heli shot stuff
from a helicopter.
Yeah.
And that was because we're looking at this big mega reef series at the moment, and I was asked the other day, so what makes it different to the last one? Well, the technology, the drones. We've learned all these new stories since then, and new biological stories, and just the visual storytelling now is really strong underwater.
Yes.
When I first started, the broadcasters used to call them bubble docs. It was just images just strung together. And then when I first started, I was always, the comment I used to get a lot from producers back in the day goes, "Oh, we didn't realize you could actually tell a visual story underwater." It was just like, it was right at the beginning of that whole move and trend.
Yeah. So a lot of that, when you're now looking at producing something, you are putting so much time into the pre-planning, I suppose. So much must go on with the gear you need. I mean, we all know that the marine environment is pretty volatile. There's salt water involved. There's the ability to leave a lens cap on to not have charged your battery. Are you working as a one-man band? There is your big team getting you ready to go and do the important stuff. Is you like the actor that gets fluffed up and then just does the important stuff? Or are you everything to everybody?
God, don't even get an assistant these days. Yeah, there was a peak a few years ago, just before leading into COVID, where there's a lot getting done and the budgets are really good. It's about the only time the budgets have ever been good, where you could have an assistant and stuff like that. But, I've nearly always been a one-man band, tagging on science expeditions or just going off on tourism or just going off on other things myself. And I remember when we did the Attenborough Barrier Reef series, the budgets were that tight, so when you look at that series, about a third of it was stuff I'd already shot from the library. A third was David, and a third was the stuff I went and shot for it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, they're like, we want to make a making of episode now. You got some footage of you in action. I'm like, I was by
it's
myself.
me.
Right. And I go, all I have are some videos I shot on my iPhone for my niece when I was up at Rhino Island. Hey, Misha, look at all the turtles behind me.
It doesn't
That's
happen.
all they had. So they used that and just cut out the "Hey, Misha" at the beginning of each of the videos I was making for her. And
Sometimes those bits are some of the most fascinating parts of it, because people, can see the beauty and they get used to the beauty and the detail and the level and the shot choice that you go through. The behind the scenes of the people swinging in the trees in the rainforest or having to have their tanks changed as they're on the bottom because they need to stay down longer to get the shot. That's the fascinating parts of putting those docos together.
Yeah, no, people love it. And I must say, the one technology that's just come out in the last couple of years, which I've embraced, is when I'm out now, I have a 360 camera hanging off my main rig, so I can actually film myself working.
Right, yeah.
To do that behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And
that's 360.
Then I'm still on myself, it's just like...
But at least it's running, it's there all the time, and you can crop, you can use whatever you need to. The hardest part, I always find the hardest part of those is knowing what to edit out of them. You got all of this brilliant, beautiful footage. I saw an amazing one, and it was a rally car that had got a 360 camera off the back of it. What happened is the rally car came around the corner, flipped, the camera disconnected from the vehicle, but they were able to use the 360 camera footage of the car in a distance spinning. So it basically filmed itself doing this barrel roll. So it's incredible when you've got it running all the time, what you can actually make from it.
Yeah. Especially the last two iterations have had these dive housings that you get the whole 360. The first ones, it's always a brick at the bottom, but now they look past it. And I was down just doing great whites for this new Nat Geo series a few weeks ago, and I was in the cage, so I had to have the 360 just on my housing, because normally you put it out on a bit of a pole, but so I had the door open and all this kind of stuff filming, and everyone's like, did you have a drone outside the cage filming back in whilst the shark's coming up in? I was like, nah, it's just a 360. It's awesome.
Wow. Have you got into the world of the underwater drones? Because I know there are a lot of them around now. Is that something you sort of started to look into?
We do. With Bipixel Oceans, our research foundation, we have Professor Matt Dunbabin, who's the preeminent underwater roboticist in the world. He now works for us, and he's the guy that invented Cotspot, the Crown of Thorns killing robot and all the Ranger bots. So we've got Matt now designing new tags for us, camera systems for us, motion control systems, all the ones I've been talking about. Matt, I just dream up with what I want to do with the camera. And Matt, make it happen. So we're very lucky within Bipixel Oceans that we have this. We've got our science unit and the natural history unit working together and cross-pollinating all the time.
It's scary to think where it'll be, or brilliantly scary to think where it'll be in 15 years' time. I remember, so I paddled the Barrier Reef in 2011, and at that stage there was Richard Fitzpatrick and Christoph, and they were the guys that brought together that concept of the underwater Earth idea. So underwater Earth being Google Maps Street View underwater. They, at that stage, remember they had those original GoPro cameras all put in a circle, and they're one facing out, and they would stitch everything together seamlessly, and that was the Insta360 X5 of the day. So much time to get it done, so much processing power to link it all together. Christ knows where it will be in 15 years' time with that.
No, it's insane where we go.
In terms of marine life, there's the micro, there's the macro, there's the really big stuff. What are your preferences? What do you love shooting? Because you're known as the shark man. What did you start on, and what do you love doing these days?
Oh, what I've always been known for is shooting behavioral sequences. So whether it's feeding or reproduction, to really get to know the animals and do that. And some of them, because we've got a massive library that everyone falls onto to develop. And for example, when we did do the Attenborough series, David, all the conversations were, I want to do a clownfish story. And I go, well, for the last 10 years, I've been trying to work out on how to film clownfish eggs hatching, because even the scientists had never seen it. And I finally cracked it. And so like, cool, that's one of the stories. So awesome. So even between projects, I am working on the science and the filming to try and document whether it's feeding or natural history or reproduction. So they're the things. So whether it's small, large, they're the things that if you've got them happening in front of you, the animal's really at ease in your presence. So we've just with our foundation, we've just discovered the whale shark aggregation on the Great Barrier Reef, and that we have these Emmy-winning whales, and we find the first aggregation of the giant oceanic mantas as well. So
this is only from time in those locations being able to pick up the idea that it's happening and then sort of focus and research towards them.
So knowing something's happening and then going, okay, this needs to be looked at, and then a funding opportunity came up to go and a seed funding to go and look. And we found it. We're really lucky. We do a lot of due diligence as to where and when would be the highest chance. But, to find megafauna, you have to hire spotter planes. You got a big research boat. You got drones. You got big collaborators from all over the world. And, that was discovered 5 years ago.
Wow.
And now we've tagged almost 50 whale sharks that now showing to come back each year to the far northern part of the Great Barrier Reef. And these Emmy-winning whales, like, in my 30 years of going up there, you'd see these whales in the distance.
What are these? Explain. I know a fair bit about marine whale, but tell me about these.
Yeah, exactly. Now I go, what the hell's an Emmy-winning? So they were only described in the 90s. It's a large whale, so about twice the size of a minke. So getting up to 14 meters long. It's a baleen whale, and they're believed that they don't migrate. They're tropical all year round, which is mind blowing. Because we used to see them up at Rain Island when we were up there doing turtle work at the peak of summer, when everything else
has gone south. Yes,
and then again drones. We tried to jump in the water in front of them, but these things are always moving. And then when drones came along, and then I got special permits to get close to the whales, that we go, it's something different. And we spoke to the expert who said, you got to see, we need footage of the front right-hand side of the snout to confirm it's an Amura, because everyone thought they were British whales or small fin whales. And then, I remember the first time I finally had the permits, the drone and the expedition, had the drone above looking straight down on this massive whale, 14 meters long, cruising at quite high speed. And I'm dropping down slowly onto it to get a better eye view. And then from underneath comes the baby. It was just like,
those moments of, did I just see that?
Yeah. So now I've filmed a few mother and calf pairs. And then one of the trips we had, they were lunge feeding on the surface. And then from the drone, a few times you could see them coming up from the depths as the baleen plates extended. So that they had been feeding. And so, we knew that there was these seasonal upwellings with lots of food coming in and all this megafauna coming. And then the only place where you have that aggregation of whale shark, Amura, oceanic mantas, and schools of mobilers is the northern side of Madagascar. So this is a really interesting part of the Barrier Reef.
Isn't it? It seems like that the advances in technology allow you the access to do the research that's never been done before. And this is the storytelling. This is the future storytelling of what's going on. It's not just about the best cinematic shot that a drone can show. It's about the research and the access it allows you to get.
Yeah, it's just bringing it all together. And then the last expedition, we put a 4K video camera on the back of the whale shark. We could see how it was, what it was doing. For funders and stuff like that, it's really good to have. You want to have that both scientific output. We've already published a few scientific papers on the discovery, but then having the visuals as the story all goes hand in hand. So that's where people say, what is biopixel? It's that interface between science and media. We are generating the science, particularly megafauna, which is not overly funded in Australia. And then we use the filmmaking side to help fund that research to happen. So we're very much a hybrid model.
But there was a symbiosis on the Great Barrier Reef. You are that, the example
Yeah,
of
we're
it.
the clownfish and the anemone. Or
Yeah.
probably more closely to the pearlfish and the sea cucumber. Yep.
You can tell that story. Let's tell that story. Come on. Is there anyone that knows? Okay, there's an amazing scene from it. Was it the Great Barrier Reef doco or was it the
That was that
underwater
first
one? Yeah.
BBC series that I remember telling when we're fleshing out, planning the whole series of, the boss of the Natural History Unit from NHU, Neil Nightingale. And, in the second episode, which is all about all the interconnected environments, I'm like, I want to tell this story about this fish that lives up the anus of sea cucumbers. And Neil's like, yeah, that's not happening. I'm like, no, seriously, it's a very interesting story. And he's like, no. So I did what I normally do. Don't listen to anyone. And I went and shot it. And then we edited it in. And it was the most popular part of the whole series. The most commented on.
It sits in every kid's and adult's brain as who would live up the anus of a sea cucumber.
And then that footage has been used over and over again in other BBC series. So, yeah.
You
never listen to the parents.
My little boy Atlas is absolutely besotted with the 72 Deadliest series. You're obviously in there in your earlier years talking about all the things that can be poisonous to you, can bite you, can kill you, all those sorts of things. You have a fascination with the stuff that is dangerous in a way. From a research perspective, I remember at James Cook University milking a stonefish for its venom with you. A very memorable moment in my life during Best Job days. Where did that fascination come from? And is that, again, mainly research-based, or is that for the docos that you try and do it?
Both. As a teenager with all the fish tanks, we just wanted to keep the most dangerous animals at home. So we had stonefish, sea snakes, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Shit.
And then that just traveled through to then, working with Jamie Seymour here at JCU's the marine expert for the world. So we've got our lab here is a joint lab between the two of us. So we've got cone shells and stonefish, and during summer we've got the box jellies and irukandji down there. And obviously from the documentary side, there's always an interest in the most venomous, dangerous animals. That's that's our bread and butter, sharks and venomous animals. I think BBC and Nat Geo and all those guys just think Australians are expendable, that we can go do all these crazy things. Yeah, and, still got pet cone shells down there now and stonefish that we're always looking at different ways of filming them. But the lab that we have here, we supply stonefish, box jelly and sea snake venom to the venom labs at CSL, which are transformed into anti-venom.
Yes.
And then Jamie's got a whole suite of students, postgrad students, working on various aspects of all the venoms. So, yeah,
there's a really good philanthropic reason for doing it, and that's the reason to help other people who get themselves in trouble that don't mean to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of potential medical outputs from the venoms themselves being used for different parts, like pain management and all these kind of things. So, there's a lot of interest in biopharmacology, particularly from the oceans, with what these animals are producing. Yeah, and again, it's part of that symbiosis between us filming and researching and using camera gears to film and do research that's never been done before. Like, we've got cameras that can film at 2,000 pictures a second. So then you can see how the stinging cells work in a box jellyfish and irukandji, or the venom comes out of the stonefish, and it's infrared systems for looking at nocturnes, and it just goes on. But yeah, it's just how it weaves together.
There must be so many tools at your disposal in a way. It must be sometimes hard to know which the right one is on the day and what you've got. Do you sometimes find like, oh, if only I had this camera, if I'd have done this, or...
I was a bit disappointed last year. I was sitting there, I actually think, there's nothing that I want. I got it all. What
a nice place to read.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool. But the problem is, like, especially these days, sometimes they want you out there just for a day. And in that day, you do your drone shot, your presenter interviews, your underwater cutaways, time lapse, 360, a couple of promotional stills. And so, you just like, have all the different camera systems lined up and just like,
just
swap next. Yeah, unfortunately, the industry is less money and less time, which means you're just chewing through. And I mean, because I've been doing all the different systems all the time, I'm sort of just doing it by myself, so they don't have to hire multiple crew, because I can do all the different genres in natural history.
You put yourself in the space of, I've spent time on the Barrier Reef and I've been unfortunate. I haven't meant to, but I got an irukandji sting and I got a crown of thorns spine in the toe and had to have an operation on it. You put yourself in the space to understand more about what it's like to suffer from some of these stings and bites and things. Let's hear about some of the sort of
I'm
the
not
most.
intentionally. It's just
Don't you sting yourself sometimes? Haven't you done that in the past?
it happens enough naturally. Yeah,
Close calls in the middle of nowhere?
I've been bitten and stung. Yeah, actually, it's easier to say what I haven't been done by, which would be a stingray and a cone shell. Everything else I've been bitten and stung by. Numerous. We've had shark bites, shark concussions, sea snake bites, irukandji hits, box jellies, heaps of stonefish stuff. But it's when shit happens. It's it just happens occasionally. So
you're not trying to get your portfolio of all the different ones. You're still missing the stingray, because the stingray, I mean, obviously we know Mr. Irwin, that was an unfortunate way to go, but it's obviously one of the ones that's the most impacting and least expected.
Yeah, a mate of mine, Lyle, had one through the foot. I know a few people having the foot and the legs. It just sounds horrendous. It's not it's the immediate pain, but just the tissue death that it's a really nasty venom. I mean, if you look at all the venoms we have, most of them are associated with feeding and digestion. So, snakes, the venom came from, saliva, spiders, cone shells, and all that kind of stuff. But in the marine world, stonefish and stingray are the only two where they're there just to do pain, just to tell their predators to leave us alone. So, they're gnarly, but I think I'm up to about 13 stonefish/lionfish stings.
What was your last one? What's the last one where you needed to get more than just Jamie's help to get over it? You had to go to a medical centre.
Actually, it was a crown of thorns.
They're horrible bastards, aren't they?
I was coming in from an overseas shoot, and then I had supposed to be a week-long shoot here, but I had to go overseas for another shoot. My production manager, Hannah, convinced the producer that I could do a week's work in like 4 days if I did nights as well. And then the first shoot was a crown of thorns, and I realised when I was flying in that we didn't have one. So got in at midnight that morning. I took off to sea by myself about 4 a.m, went out on the reef, but I forgot to take, because I had just come from overseas, I didn't have any good tools at home, so I took the barbecue tongs. And so when I picked up the crown of thorns, those shitty barbecue tongs, and I picked it up to put it in the bucket, and it slid down the barbecue tongs, and the spine went in behind my fingernail and snapped off.
Oh.
And I was like, that's going to really hurt.
Yeah.
And so then, I went to work, came back in about 8 a.m, had the crown, started shooting that, and we had to do, we're doing like 6 different animals a day. And then I was really starting to thump, and it was a public holiday. I told Hannah to go off and get me some painkillers, and I was just singing in my head, oh, that's right, because I'd come from overseas. On the schedule, I could have the first night off. I could actually just work the day, have the night off. And then I was thinking, I'm going to be in hospital getting this thing dug out. And then later that afternoon, I had this jib arm set up, and something happened, and it fell over. And I went to catch and save the camera before it went in the water. I got my hands scissored by the jib, which is a mechanical scissor arm with 40-kilogram dumbbell weights on one end, and that hurt. So then I had 2 hands like this, and I'm like, Hannah, you're going to have to drive me to hospital. And then the director's there like, so will we be okay for tomorrow morning? And I went, yeah, I'll be back.
Yeah, we'll fine.
They had to go to hospital, and my mate who was in charge of the ER, he saw me, he goes, what have you done? I told him, and he just gave me a student doctor and said, you're going to have to teach them how to dig. Poor student doctor, she goes, what's a crown of thorns? And I'm like, okay, you're going to have to cut all this open, and so... Yeah,
I hadn't realised how much of a little sort of translucent spine it puts in, because I had a similar thing with one on the reef in the Whitsundays. I was out there with a group kayaking. We were on water for 5 days, no way of getting back to mainland. And I thought that was it. It brushed and it was like, oh, that's going to be irritating. Hot water as hot as you can every single day. And that was it. And then 5 days later, I had general anaesthetic, and they split the end of my toe open, cut it open, pulled it out, and left it in a jar. I hadn't realised how much it actually leaves in you. Yeah,
the damn things snap off really easily. And when you look under it on a microscope, they've got all these backward-facing spine. So then they lock in.
Yeah.
It's just
then it's just ruthlessly throbbing.
Yeah. Another reason to hate crown of thorns starfish.
So the smaller stuff on the reef, and now there always has been this fascination with the sharks and the big stuff and the tracking. How did you start and get into that? And when did it then become this thing, the mantra that you're known for?
Because I started in public aquariums, and particularly when I moved to Manly Aquarium We had grey nurse. We actually had a great white shark in captivity for 5 days. But there was a lot of very hands-on stuff. We were catching sharks, and then in the tank, sometimes we had to catch them and weigh them and measure them as part of their growth, and taking blood from them. So you're going up and grabbing 3-meter sharks, and I learned all those hands-on activities in that world. And so when I came back up to the reef to work for Marine Park Authority on the side, I started a whole research programs out in the Coral Sea of what was the Undersea Explorer as an ecotourism boat. So I started to apply all those hands-on activities to my research in the field, which no one was really doing. Everyone else was smarter than me, I suppose. But at Osprey, instead of hooking the sharks, because a lot of people were going out there and paying a lot of money to go see the sharks. So
Osprey Reef, for anyone who doesn't know, 120 kilometres offshore, away from the eastern side of the Great Barrier Reef, and up north of Port Douglas.
Yeah. So it's in Australia's Coral Sea Marine Park now. So I'd tail rope the sharks. So we'd put a couple of milk crates tied together, put all the food inside that, and when the sharks would come up and try and get the food out of the crate, I'd swim up behind, grab them by the tail, transfer a lasso onto it, and tail rope, and then swim them up to the boat to do the weighing, measuring, tagging, and all the monitoring. And then so we're doing white tips, grey reef. We do a lot of studies out there on that. They're looking at the home ranges, putting tags on them. That's when the tag technology that we still use today, these little ultrasonic tags that you surgically implant in the animal. So I learned how to do all the surgeries from a vet, and then those sharks out there were pretty well the test beds for a lot of the new technologies as they came out. And then started going up to Rain Island and seeing all the tigers up there and thinking, I'll just do the same thing, jump in the water and tail rope them.
Just tail rope a tiger shark.
Yeah. And 60 Minutes did a story on me, how I did it, and then the show, you see me getting knocked out. Then the uni had some issue about OH&S or safety. They said, no more of that. So then I invented this thing called the shark claw, which is like a handcuff that you could just snap over the tail of the tiger as it swam past the tender and catch it that way. So that was better.
So just doing things topside.
Mum appreciated that more than me jumping in the water with them.
With these trackers, are there things that were in the early days just able to ping a signal once they were surfacing? Is that how they worked?
There's a few. So the ones we surgically implanted, you had to have listening stations around the study site. And if the shark came in within about 500 meters, it would record time and date and a unique number of that shark. Yeah. And they're good for, those tags go for 10 years. And in fact, I was just doing that last couple of days. Bipixel Oceans in the last couple of years, we've tagged over 1,200 animals in Queensland, and we've got now 340 listening stations from the Tweed all the way around to Cape York. And so we've got heaps of species tagged, hammers, bulls, tigers, pig eyes, lemons. New South Wales have their listening array, and they've been tagging heaps of bulls, tigers, and great whites. And so there's listening stations all around Australia. So we're getting phenomenal data now on movement patterns of long scale movement patterns, year-to-year movement patterns of all these species. So we're kind of at the golden age of shark research. But those data loggers have to be downloaded every 12 months. So it's not real time.
Yeah.
To get real time, that's when we put a satellite tag on. And they generally, if they go for a year, we're happy. 18 months, even happier. We've got one on one of our whale sharks that went for 3 years in a row, her returning. But for the satellite tags to work, the dorsal fin has to come out of the water. And there's a anode on the tag, and it turns it on, then it goes up to the satellite system.
Christ, that's got to happen quickly, isn't it?
Yeah. And then, if you get a hit every 1 or 2 days out of those is pretty good because, it gives you a footprint. And then with those animals, we normally surgically implant the tag as well. So you got the two data sets working together and, because those satellite tag only works on the surface.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know
and it's
where
rare for some of those species to come up to there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be the right species, but we did.
Yeah.
But you can get other data from them, like depth, what's your maximum depth? And we've just had some records of some of our whale sharks going 2,500 meters down off the barrier reef out in the Coral Sea.
My goodness. So these are some of the WTF moments. When you've got this data that's coming back, you think you know what's happening, you think you know migratory routes. What are some of those moments where you've just gone, I had no idea?
Every day. That's what happens. Every day you look at these tracks and you're like, it's doing something we never thought before. I suppose in the early days when we did tigers, I always thought tigers were reef associated, and they spend more time. The ones at Rain spent more time in their coral sea than on the barrier reef, like out in the middle of nowhere where the water's really deep. Then begs the question, what are they doing out there?
Right.
That's what happens with, you look at these tracks and you go, well, there's only two reasons animals are moving like that. It's either feeding or fornication.
Feeding or breeding.
We're almost
Feeding or
slipped up
breeding.
there.
Feeding or breeding.
And then, yeah, it is it's a detective story, and you keep throwing different technologies at it to, build that story, which is actually this 4-part series we've just finished shooting for Nat Geo, which is on our shark research of biopixelations around Australia, and with our colleagues like Charlie Hooverneers and Laura Mayer down, and they're out of Flinders. So, we all went and did great whites. Then we went to Norfolk, and then, Great Barrier Reef. And then we even did Daintree of bull sharks and started tagging crocodiles. Yeah, that's quite fun.
You must just have a really good laugh and good time with some really good, interesting people, don't you? There aren't many boring days in your office.
No, we're only on those trips with those kind of people. Like every night's like a science conference.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Like sometimes
Exhausting.
You're like, what a break. It's like, but and then that's when all the new ideas come out. Once you've had dinner and had a few beverages. And
could we do this? Is this possible? Why not?
Everyone goes, oh, I saw this. And you're like, oh, let's go do that.
Love it. The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority obviously do a massively important job at zoning and policing and looking after this wonderful natural wonder that we have along the east coast of Australia. That zoning system, I don't know the year it was brought in, but that obviously has some really tight zoning on some really important areas. And one that you go to regularly is up at Rain Island. Just explain to anyone that has no idea the significance of Rain Island and why it's protected so much.
It's right in the far north of the reef. It's the world's was the world's largest green sea turtle nesting site. It's about 800 metres long and 400 metres wide at its widest point. And the monitoring has been happening there since the early 70s of the turtles. And on an average night, you used to get 4,000 to 5,000 turtles a night nesting up there. I've been going there since early 90s, mid 90s. And I went up first to do tiger sharks up there because there were just so many. And then the research up there, we discovered that the tiger sharks were migrating there, had seasonal migrations to coincide with the turtles, not to eat the living, but the number of dead carcasses that were coming off the island of just old turtles dying of heat stress and the tide zone. But then when we did the Barrier Reef, the first BB series 15 odd years ago, we went after Christmas to do what should have been 500,000 hatchlings coming off the island at night, and we discovered less than 100. So we worked out that the island was actually non-functional. And so then funding was put together. And the reason because we were going for very long periods for natural history was the rangers used to go up only for 2 weeks each year. And to make it easier, they'd pick the neap tides, not there for the king tides. And on the king tides, we did all these time lapses of the island flooding. And so then the decision was made to take excavation gear up there and actually, move the sand around and make the island higher and lift those turtle eggs out of the zone. So because turtles were still there in good numbers, this flooding must have been happening for less than a generation of a turtle's life, 50, 60 odd years. But we don't know how long the failure had been happening for. So then we've always been expecting a drop in turtle population, even though we've done all this fixing, but you won't actually see the effects of the fixing until the first of those turtles get mature and come back, which is still 30 years away.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, in the last couple of years, it's gone from the 4,000 to 5,000 to some years less than 150 turtles, 200 nesting a night. This last season was pretty good. There was a peak again, about 3,000, but I suspect next year will be absolutely bugger all. And so, it's one of those things where this adaptive management has happened, but it's going to be a long time before we know how effective that actually was. Meantime, you have issues of microplastics in the water, larger plastics that babies are eating, feminization of the population because it's so hot. No male turtles are coming off the island. The heat determines the sex of the turtles. And then one of the big issues that was kind of overlooked in the management plan was the effect on predators. Because if you only have, a couple hundred nests emerging each night, and it's about a 50% hatch rate, that the predators, the birds, the crabs, the fish, the sharks probably mean that island's going to be non-functional again for a while on those low nesting years. So
Yeah.
So we're now doing a lot of work on the southern Great Barrier Reef and the islands down there to do predator prey, the more holistic look at, so then we can have a better idea of how that system works before it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Whereas up at Rain, it's always playing catch up.
It's interesting. The sort of that stuck between a rock and a hard place on what you do. Sometimes people talk about humans not getting involved with nature at all and the effects it has. But obviously going up there, that conservation for somewhere as significant as Rail Island is something that is proactive and people are working to protect that population. What are your thoughts on it, on a local scale, but then also on an international scale of helping things out?
Well, it's the way to go. It's the only way we can help. The rates are changing so fast. We have to get in there. You call it assisted evolution or adaptive management, but we're seeing it. Yeah, I think Rain, God, even Attenborough wasn't allowed there during the Blue Planet 2 series, because it was just so hands off.
Yeah.
In those days. And then you took excavator equipment up. and all that footage actually appeared in the Great Barrier Reef Attenborough series because I'd filmed it all and we just supplied it for the doco series. So he talks about that whole project in that. And but since then, you've got all the reef stars being deployed around major tourism sites where, that's a good technique at that scale to keep their tourism sites looking good, but not that scalable past that. But then, hey, that keeps our multi-billion-dollar tourism industry going. And there's other interventions, not just on the Great Barrier, but marine environments all over the place. All the seawall stuff they're doing in Sydney Harbour for the different kelps and stuff to go on instead of having just a cement wall having all these biological shapes and stuff. And then replanting kelp beds and all that kind of jazz. So we're going to have to do as much of this as possible for the next 150 years until we see a reverse in the trend of climate change to get back to what it was. So then Mother Nature can bloom again. It's going to be all hands on deck for the next 150 years to keep whatever we can. And something like the Great Barrier Reef, it's too big to do it all. So you need to pick the areas that are most vital and those that probably seed more reefs, looking at where the spawn comes from and that can weather, that's why we did the megafauna research on the whale sharks and stuff like that. They're a much better oceanographer than what we are. So they can teach us where the upwellings occur during summer. And if upwellings are occurring in these spots, that means that area around is probably going to be a bit more thermally tolerant.
Yeah.
But, you just see the depressing part of my job is, having watched the decline in a lot of parts of not just the reef, but just the environment around the world generally.
It's a big, big topic always. It's always the headline grabber. It's always the World Heritage statement about, we're not going to list you anymore as a wonder if you don't do better to protect it. But obviously, coral bleaching is the word that comes up and there are different parties that talk about it positively and negatively. The evolution of the planet. We're trying to fossilize a moment in time and believe that is the only way it should be. But obviously, the further south you go on the Barrier Reef, the cooler the waters, the less likelihood there is of coral bleaching going on, but there's still the effects of it. That's becoming more and more regular. Just your, real overview on where we are at that stage with coral bleaching in the Barrier Reef.
Well, everywhere's been bleached now. So we had that mega bleaching event in the southern, around Heron, Lady Elliot, and all that stuff 2 years ago. I was down there, we're doing shark research, and it was bleached out down to 27 meters, So those spots I used to go to at Northwest and Heron as a kid growing up, to go back and see them bleached, and then the recovery was okay. I think looking at Heron, maybe a third of the heavily bleached colonies didn't make it. That was pretty confronting. Actually, we did a thing for BBC Panorama, which was on Four Corners. It was shown in Australia, where I went out with the crew to film it, and then talking with them. I said I grew up here, and they're like, "Oh, you want to be in the show?" And I was like, "Oh." And it was pretty confronting because I was doing a lot of climate change shooting that year. There's a mega series coming out at the end of this year that I've been shooting for 3 years on climate change on the Great Barrier Reef through the eyes of an anemone and its clownfish. And
love it.
God, one day last year, I was seriously thinking about quitting. It was just, I had enough. It was just getting too depressing seeing this thing. This anemone getting bleached 3 years in a row. The first 2 years from heat, and then the third year, last year, was from the fresh water.
Wow, because we had so much
And like,
volume of rain on land.
yeah, this thing could be over 100 years old, this anemone.
But it's
And
still
you think
survived,
about,
and it's still there, and it's still going.
yeah, but the clownfish pair, unfortunately, that I've been filming that anemone for at least 15, 20 years, and the pair finally, yeah, she didn't make it last year. It was just too much. And then, but, the new ones had moved in and we followed through on that.
You see the
But,
animals, you see the marine life with its personality in the way that the octopus teacher did, that knowing the creature. That was a fascinating thing that really exposed that world of Cape Town, wasn't it? The cold water of Cape
yeah,
Town, the
yeah.
octopus teacher down there, the cold water. Lovely to see personality to marine life, and you obviously experience that day to day.
Yeah, so that is the one part they are in the making of episode. They are featuring me. It's very. I've seen the edits from around the world, and it's all told to climate change through the eyes of the animals themselves. It's probably going to be one of the most powerful ones I've ever seen. But they're like, "Oh, we're going to put you in the making of," because I'll be down there filming, and because I'm just in board shorts, and then you'd feel this big, solid, slimy thing come and lock between your legs, and you look down, it's the Mary Ras, Wally, and then I'll be doing these elaborate. Got the underwater joystick driving the probe lens coming into the anemone, and then I'm watching the viewfinder like this, and then from above come these big lips.
Oh God, this is so cool.
Out, Wally. You just bomb in while I was working. And they're like, yeah, we want to use Wally as the as your camera assistant. I'll be filming and just look, and he'd be sitting on my shoulder. You got the lips there, and just like, okay,
The familiarity of marine life when it becomes comfortable enough to become your friend and your neighbor is sort of a big part of your story, isn't it?
Well, it's that next step when they actually start becoming really annoying.
Yes, yeah, get out. Your camera hogging on me. I can't, as an Englishman, go past the fact that in May this year we have a significant landmark in the world of nature and storytelling. It's Attenborough's 100th birthday. You've obviously had some amazing times with him as a human, as a presenter, as a talent. Got any stories you can share with us?
Loves his red wine and steak.
Does he? Brilliant. That's it in a nutshell.
Well, actually, I always thought the most interesting stories I told he was telling that one Barbie we're at was when him and Packer came up with one day cricket. Because when he was the head of the BBC. And then the other one, I didn't realize the colour of a tennis ball that's from Attenborough, again, being the head of BBC from when it went from black and white to colour.
Yeah, I knew he did that from reading his book. Yes. Okay.
So there's all these things that people have no idea of his impacts on modern society.
Isn't it fascinating? I mean, God, just get there, for God's sake. Get to the 100. It's more significant than the Queen and than anybody else that gets an award, I believe. That is the person who educated me, a generation, multiple generations, my son, the next generation. Who is our next upcoming storyteller on that scale?
We're not going to have one that's encompassing like that.
Yeah.
In terms of narrations, the shows I've been doing for Netflix lately, we had Morgan Freeman has narrated a lot of them.
Best voice for it, yes.
The one I did enjoy was the Greatest National Parks we did, and Obama narrated it. And I thought that was an amazing voice. And just to have that, as opposed to an actor, someone with just that sense of authority behind it. But I must say, probably my funniest of Attenborough stories would be, I stood him up for dinner at the Sydney Opera House, famously once at Ove Gilbert, the professor, and he goes, "What the hell?" I go, "The corals are spawning." I'm filming. Get there another night. And but when we did the Barrier Reef series, because he wrote it, and just in the conference calls and with the production team and all that kind of stuff, David had it in his head that somewhere he'd learnt that mantis shrimp had this elaborate mating dance, kind of like, the tarantulas do. And then we're trying to searching the literature and everything, can't find any references to it. And he goes, no, I'm sure. And, so we tried to film it, and then we had the mantis. As soon as the male mantis shrimp saw the female, just went straight over and would mate with her, So then we're like, maybe if we had glass separating them, that he would, that didn't work. And maybe if he was stressed and tired, and then we put him next to the female, that would slow him down. And they made, nope, bang, and just mate with it.
You don't question the story, I imagine. You don't question it. You just work out how he saw it or witnessed it.
Oh, that's right. And then we took water. You had a mantis shrimp with a male, and then we'd take water from that and introduce it to the water around the female to see if she had some, I don't know, some response or whatever. And in the end, I just like, we spent months trying to work on it. I was like, David, we can't, as soon as the male, doesn't matter what condition he's in, as soon as he sees the female, bang. And they actually have a mantis shrimp missionary position, which is pretty bizarre. And I go, I don't know, these are Australian mantis shrimp, but there's no foreplay whatsoever. Maybe one of the overseas ones around a French island somewhere, they're a bit more romantic. But in
bit more
Australia,
tropical out there, yeah. Didn't happen for you.
Nah, straight in.
Attenborough, you can Google, you can YouTube, whatever you want. Attenborough's, top 100 moments on camera. Mine, I think it always comes up with number one. It's the surfacing of the blue whale where he's in the rib alongside it, and the joy and the passion and the wow in there. You must have a favorite moment from him.
I do love that one. And considering all the logistics that would have been behind that to get him there, well, to find the whale, get him next to it, right next to it, and get the surfacing shot. That would have taken
the background story is 20 times as long as the moment.
A heap of work. But actually, his very first ZooQuest expedition show, which was his quest to Papua for paradise birds, in 1953, and I got a copy of it. And I got it from the BBC when I was over there editing the Barrier Reef series. Was him going to New Guinea from a little country town called Cairns, where I live now, up and on the journey north, there's this place called Rain Island, and his very first show on ZooQuest is actually about Rain Island, episode 1 of his New Guinea trip.
My God, I mean, the research in those days, there was nothing to research. This was, there was no way of picking up the facts from somebody else that had done it before. This was very pioneering early days of exploration.
Yeah, it was just mind-blowing. So, yeah.
So the projects that you've worked on in the last few years that are coming to light now, what do we need to keep our eyes open for, Mr. Fitzy?
Well, this big climate change series, but until it goes to air, we won't actually know the title of it because the titles change until it goes to air. And then, there's a massive one we've just finished with Disney, but I'm under so many NDAs, I can't even mention that one. That's the problem. Everyone goes, you don't post much on Instagram. It's because we're locked by NDA until the damn things come out, So, but at the moment on... what do we got? Disney Channel. Probably the last big Rain Island shoot stuff we did on that was Ultimate Animal Journeys, the marine episode. There's 3 parts: is humpbacks, the crabs at Christmas Island, and the turtle journey.
That's really that. Where's that broadcast?
Disney Plus.
Yeah, gotcha.
Ultimate Animal Journeys, and then on Netflix, Our Universe. There's a whole episode about turtles and how energy flows. I think it's episode 3 or 4. That was pretty cool. I did a lot of background plates for the life on our planet, which was the dinosaur, the evolution of life on the planet. So the seabirds that grabbed the turtles were replaced by pterodactyls grabbing the turtles. And the fact that was all being animated by Industrial Light and Magic, which is George Lucas's company, I was totally fanboying out on the fact that I was doing all that. And Stan still has the Great Barrier Reef Attenborough series and the original BBC series there. So there's I keep forgetting. There's stuff everywhere. Like, last count, I've shot 150 docos, and I was just like,
you got to be proud. You got to be proud of turning. But it's a child of passion that became a business, that became a career, that became a way of educating and helping the world preserve these spaces. You've got to be proud of the journey you're taking.
Oh, yeah, no one else was dumb enough to do it, I
think. If you had to, we talked just before you came on air about you might actually take a holiday at some point. If you do a holiday, what is holidaying for Richard Fitzpatrick? What does it look like?
So we only got married again about 4 years ago. We had one weekend in Hong Kong since then, and then in 2 weeks we're due to go to Ningaloo for a week, but we're about to get hit by a cyclone here in 2 days' time. And then I just look at the track that goes across the whole of Australia and then to Ningaloo. So I think I'm about to get hit by the same cyclone 2 weeks in a week.
God. So that sounds like a series, though, doesn't it? It's like the evolution of a cyclone. Film it here, film it.
Yeah, and then it's my wife Belinda's like, "What are we doing over there?" "Oh, I'm going to take the drone. We're going to do some filming. There's some blue ring octopus I want to go look for up there. I've been wanting to see that species for a
You
while."
don't really holiday. You're as bad as me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as James Bond said, with what was it, Roger Moore, "Spy Who Loved Me." When a marine biologist is near the ocean, he's never on holidays.
My go-to, my place, if I want to be anywhere in the world for a moment, it is dawn, pre-dawn by about half an hour, snorkeling off Lighthouse Bommy at Lady Elliot, because I almost always know I'm going to have something below me. Where would you be if you could drop yourself in the ocean at any pinpoint at any moment? Where would you be?
Either Rain or Lady Elliot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just down there for the last couple of days again. So yeah, it's I love the megafauna down there.
Yeah.
And because it's not a big island, the megafauna is concentrated. So
Nice.
you're right. On one swim, you can see heaps of stuff. So
yeah. I hate the fact that we come to the end of our hour. I really do, because it's always just a lovely dip into someone else's world, and it inspires me to go out and pick up the snorkel, to get the scuba tank charged, to get underwater. Thank you for sharing life behind the lens, the way you do it, the craft of filmmaking, and the deeper side of sustainability and why things matter in this world. For anyone that's out there who enjoyed this chat, hit follow and share it with someone who could use a little nature in their life. And if you think this conversation has got you thinking about where your next adventure will be, above, on, below the water, check out wildearth.com for the gear and inspiration to get you there. We'll see you next time for more wild stories from the oceans, the peaks, and the edge of the map. Thanks, Richie.
see you, mate.